this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, it is good to be back after last week. I was on the final AIDS life cycle ride, cycling almost 600 miles from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Now, I trained for the ride, Tolliver. I did not train for the camping. And I'm not a camper, it turns out.
Yeah, neither am I. I mean, How are your thighs feeling?
My thighs are okay. I still can't really feel the tips of some of my fingers from gripping the handlebars. But anyway, a nice thing about doing that ride was I actually got to take a little break from the news. I did find out at one of the rest stops that Elon Musk and Donald Trump were fighting with each other after Musk called the so-called... exactly. At the big, beautiful bill. He called it a disgusting abomination. Now, the bill, for people who haven't been paying attention, would do a lot of things. It would cut taxes for the wealthy. It would make cuts to Medicaid, that's health care for the poor. It would eliminate clean energy tax credits, among many other things. Here is Trump responding to Musk in a meeting with reporters in the Oval Office.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem.
So the thing about this show is you don't have to be an almost trillionaire to tell us what you think. There is no income requirement to call in, and we want to hear from you this hour because this bill could become law in a matter of weeks. And if it does, it is going to affect all of us. So Tolliver, can you give people the phone number and the ways to reach us, please?
Yeah, you can call us at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube or TikTok or every single place on earth. Okay, I'm watching them all.
Joining us this hour, political analyst Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck ToddCast. Chuck Todd, welcome to The Middle.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I'm excited to have also, a DJ. I've not appeared with it.
Yes, well, I mean, that's the key to the show, is a DJ. Yes. And NPR national political correspondent Mara Liasson is with us as well. Mara, great to have you on the show as well.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get to the phones, Mara, let me start with you. When you think about all the bills that you have covered going through Congress, how significant is this one in terms of the impacts that it would have on Americans?
Well, I think it's really significant because of the size, because of the amount of trillions of dollars it adds to the deficit. It's very similar in its goals to past Republican bills, past bills that Trump has passed where they're skewed to the wealthy. High earners, high income individuals get most of the benefits. Low income individuals pay most of the costs. And it incorporates all of Trump's goals. And that's not dissimilar to past big reconciliation bills. I just think this one is on steroids. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a bill in front of Congress that would add this much to the deficit. And that's why it's causing the small amounts of Republican pushback that you see.
Chuck Todd, there's so much in this bill. What are the things that stand out to you that would have the biggest impact on Americans?
Well, the problem with this bill is that the biggest benefit is something that the public already has, which is the tax cut, right? Is because this bill is about extending the tax cuts. And this is what I think is going to make this bill very hard politically to sell. I think it's already been defined by what they're doing with Medicaid. And look, Mara and I have done this a long time. The argument about what is a cut and what is slowing the growth has been sort of the bane of the existence of the left versus right on like how you calculate on what you call a cut. But it's been pretty well defined, and it doesn't help the president that you have Republican senators calling them cuts in the Medicaid part, right? Josh Hawley has said that. Lisa Murkowski has said that. And I think that's what. Look, I think the part that the White House, probably the thing that is the newest thing, would be the additional money on border security, which is what they keep emphasizing now. But I'm very skeptical, even if this bill is as positive, has the positive impacts that they hope and pray happens with the economy. It's not going to be in time for 26, right? Bill Clinton learned that lesson. His big economic plan, his first year. Was a tough vote, party line, and it had somewhat, you could argue, negative impact for him in the near term politically. And then it kicked in and it was deemed as positive for the economy. Wall Street loved it, et cetera. So I just think this bill is going to be impossible for Republicans to sell as a net positive. At best, maybe they can neutralize it because, again, it's tough to tell somebody, hey, if we didn't do this, you would have had a tax hike. Right. Right. There's no new goodie. And I think that's that's what makes this very difficult for the administration to sell politically.
And I think back to the Obamacare passing in 2009 and then the Obama presidency just getting crushed in the midterms in 2010 as well. Mara, how important is it that Elon Musk came out, at least originally, and said this is a disgusting abomination? Does Trump need Elon Musk's support to get this through?
In the past, we would say, wow, the richest person in the world, the biggest backer of the president, he doesn't like this bill. That's really going to make a difference. I think it makes a very small difference. This bill, I think, is going to pass. Just like all the other bills like this, where people sell it saying, if you don't vote for this bill, it's the end of the Trump presidency. You load this up. And then what Chuck is talking about is how hard it's going to be to sell, not how hard it's going to be to pass it through Congress, but how hard it's going to be to make it a political positive for the Republicans. So I think that among a certain group of voters that actually were very important to Trump, young, male, you want to call them bros, they love Elon Musk. And it does matter what he says. But there's so much else going on. We're so tribalized now. That I don't know how much of an impact that would have. And also, those voters who did come out to vote for Donald Trump in 2024 are not necessarily the same voters who come out and vote in a midterm. They're infrequent, less frequent voters.
Yeah. Chuck Todd, Mara talks about all the other things that are going on right now. As we go to air, a U.S. senator was manhandled by law enforcement, Alex Padilla, when he tried to interrupt a press conference by the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. There's about to be this big military parade in Washington and hundreds of protests around the country. Trump has brought in the military in Los Angeles to deal with protests. Does any of that does it play into what's happening in Congress when it comes to getting this mega bill passed?
I almost feel like they're not, I don't want to say it's totally unrelated, but oddly, the more polarized the conversation is about immigration, the more I've talked to some congressional Republicans who say, hey, this standoff in L.A. actually has rallied the party together. So I guess you could make that case. But can I just do a what if on here? I had about a 40-minute conversation last weekend with Steve Bannon, and Bannon was clearly disappointed that the president didn't go for the tax hike idea, meaning they could have done a tax hike on, say, anybody that made $5 million or more, and then connected it and said, this is what's paying for no taxes on tips, right? And, what Bannon was envisioning is that they could really cement the idea that they're the working class party. The other, how do you, it would just gum up the Democratic talking points that, hey, they are always for tax cuts for the rich. But that's the problem that Trump has, is in that a majority of his supporters are in that working class cohort. But that isn't where a majority of elected Republicans are yet. As my friend Brad Todd likes to say about Republicans, he says, and he's a Republican strategist, he says, they were put on earth to cut taxes. That's what Republicans, and certainly in our lifetime and in the politics that Mara and I have covered for the last couple of generations, that has been the case. But it is interesting, this shift here that is potentially there, which is what also I think why a tax cut in general isn't just the easy the easy elixir for the Trump base these days.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember, you listed all those times that presidents have passed big bills and then paid for them politically in the next midterm. Don't forget Trump in the first term. It happened to him too. He passed a bill with a lot of the tax cuts that he's now trying to extend, and the public didn't like it. They thought it was a big giveaway to billionaires and to the rich. And he also suffered in his first midterm. So I think that's something that could happen. The problem with Steve Bannon takes this stuff about a working class party seriously. He does more than pay lip service to it. He actually wants Republicans to walk the walk now that they have become a different party. But when the White House floated, and I don't think that they put much muscle behind it, but they did float this idea, maybe we'll raise taxes for some of the highest earners, and that will help pay for the tax cuts for people who work for tipped wages.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
Or overtime, etc. But they got pushed back in Congress, and they didn't really try because it wasn't really a priority for the president.
Let me ask you one more thing before we take a quick break and get to some calls because the lines are filling up. But Chuck Todd, does it surprise you that this is, given that you think this is going to pass, it's clearly going to have a lot of effects on everybody, including knocking many people off of their Medicaid, that it's not getting more coverage right now?
Well, look, it's the sausage portion of congressional bill making. And oh, by the way, there's so many other things. I mean, you talked about what was happening just in the last 24 hours, last 24 minutes. You left out Israel's attack on Iran, right? Like that. And that is going to be also. So I don't want to say it's a bandwidth issue, but sort of Congress plodding along doing this. I think once it's passed, you'll see more coverage of the impact of it. And I will say this, I don't think there's so many Republicans, I think, on Capitol Hill that don't fully appreciate how the public's perception of Medicaid has changed. When I first started covering politics, Medicaid was sort of thought of as welfare, right? It was sort of put in the same category. That is not the experience of Medicaid. I mean, I'll just, my own grandmother is still 98 years old. She ran out of money. She's on Medicaid because and if she wasn't, my mom and her brother and sisters would be bankrupt trying to take care of her. I mean, Medicaid is
millions of Americans. Absolutely.
So many Americans now. And I don't think everybody
let me just remind our listeners that you can reach us at 844-4MIDDLE. And Tolliver, needless to say, this bill is not likely to get any Democratic votes in the Senate. Yeah. There are some Republicans who are opposed as well.
Yeah, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul is one of them. Here he is sharing his thoughts on CBS's Face the Nation.
Well, the math doesn't really add up. One of the things this big and beautiful bill is it's a vehicle for increasing spending for the military and for the border. It's about $320 billion in new spending. To put that in perspective, that's more than all the DOGE cuts that we found so far. And in the end, the way you add it up to see if it actually is going to save money or add money is how much debt are they going to borrow? $5 trillion over 2 years. It's an enormous amount.
I mean, he's right, Tolliver. It does add to the deficit, this bill. It is not a deficit reducer.
The math ain't mathin', as the kids say.
We'll be right back with your calls on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking what your thoughts are on Trump's Megabill. Tolliver, what is the number to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on all social media.
I'm joined by political analyst Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck ToddCast, and NPR national political correspondent Mara Liasson. And let's get to the phones because the lines are full. Jude is calling from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Jude, go ahead with your thoughts about the Megabill.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say it's an honor to be on with this panel. But I think that the coverage in the mainstream media only reflects the biased media coverage against Donald Trump and all things that Donald Trump wants to do. There's a lot of information that has been left out. For example, the Medicaid cuts are to illegal migrants who are on the Medicaid system illegally. So those cuts will not hurt Medicaid. Those will actually save it. When Chuck Todd spoke about his 98-year-old grandmother, well, do you know there's a lot of funds from Medicaid that are being spent on people who are here illegally? Now that they are being sent back to other nations, they won't need to be on those rolls. That's just one example. Another example is this: when you talk about the big tax cuts, right? Okay, well, you're not taking into account the revenue that's going to be generated from those tax cuts. So usually when there's a tax cut, there's economic growth that follows it, because I have never heard of a poor person giving someone else jobs. It's always the wealthy, right?
Well, Jude, let me ask you though, in the first Trump administration, that didn't happen with the tax cuts. They didn't pay for themselves through economic growth.
Well, okay, I will say this, though. As a student of history, I'm sure you would agree that when Ronald Reagan gave those tax cuts did. And so, you just never know. It's not chisel and stone. This is a largely social science. Yeah. And so you just, there's no guarantee. But I will say this. This is basic. When the Republicans get in, they want to give out tax cuts. When the Democrats get in, they want to give out money. Like when President Obama's stimulus, when he gave out money, and it was the same argument being made.
Jude, I've got it. I think it sounds like you're in favor of this bill. Thank you for that call. Chuck Todd, one of the things that he brought up there was Medicaid going to undocumented immigrants. There's a lot of people that would contest that is happening in any meaningful way. It's illegal for people who are here illegally to collect Medicaid benefits. But that is certainly something that Jude is not the only person that believes that.
It's how Republicans are selling this, right? They're trying to say we're not cutting Medicaid, we're trying to save Medicaid. I take the caller's point. I hope he's right? I hope that's what it is, but it doesn't appear to be the numbers that the Republicans are claiming there doesn't appear to add up. But I think the caller made a fair point. Sometimes he is right about the Reagan tax cuts, and you can go back into the Kennedy tax cuts. But in both of those cases, we had much higher tax rates, and so the impact really did have an economic impact. And this goes back. This is not a new tax cut. This is a continuation. So it isn't really juicing the economy. So I'd be surprised if there's growth connected to this.
The problem is that every single independent agency, every single independent interpreter who looks at these things and tries to, sorry, that's my dog, Buster, shush, has come out with the same conclusion, that it won't save money, that it will cut people off of Medicaid. And the other thing, Chuck made a really good point earlier about how Medicaid has changed. It's not just a program for the poor. And you know why it changed? Because Obamacare was actually a gigantic expansion of Medicaid, which the federal government took over like 90% of the cost for the states. And that is really what Obamacare was. It was getting rid of a ban on pre-existing conditions to stop you from getting health care, creating these marketplaces, but mostly it was a giant expansion of Medicaid.
Yeah, or I think your dog has a strong opinion about that. Well.
He does. I'm sorry.
I think all of our dogs are going to start talking to each other. I'm worried about that right now. Midas, be quiet. Okay. Alan is calling from Ogden, Utah. Hi, Alan. What do you think of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill?
Oh, thanks for having me on. If I could just make a few points, I would be so happy. First, if I could touch on the last caller's comment. If tax cuts went to business and businesses passed on those savings by increasing wages, that would be great for our country. I'm from Ogden, Utah. The stickers that I see and the T-shirts that I see people wearing are dirty hands, clean money. They drive huge trucks, have McMansions, boats, trailers, and those people think that Medicaid recipients are on welfare. You should just work harder. I'm all for that if the wages are up there. Now, when I call Blake Moore, his office, and say, well, why were you asleep during the bill? His office responds, Blake Moore tends to think that this bill will be deficit neutral. Well, if it's deficit neutral by cutting spending to the poor and giving benefits back to the rich, why even do it? And I think the thing that people need to be sold on is that if you're making $100,000, $200,000, go up to $500,000, you're not getting any benefits from this. It's the wealthiest of the wealthy.
You think it's just for
the
wealthy?
These people making $100,000.
Yeah, Alan,
and then the other thing that I would like to understand
let me take that thought of yours, Alan. Thank you very much for that call. We can only get a couple of points in per person, but Mara, he brings up this idea that I'm sure we're going to hear about, that this is for the wealthy, and that Chuck brought up, that even Steve Bannon didn't think that was such a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be where the Republicans are going to have trouble selling this. This is what happened to them in Trump's first term. They passed a bill very similar to this, smaller, but the benefits are skewed to the wealthy. Every single Wall Street company that's looked at this, the Congressional Budget Office, wherever you want to go for some kind of an independent analysis of the actual costs and benefits from this bill, says it's skewed to the wealthy. And that's where Republicans are going to have trouble selling this. I don't think they're going to have as much trouble passing it as they're going to have convincing people that it's good for everyone.
Okay. Daniel is calling from San Antonio, Texas. Hi, Daniel. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi, I'll make my point as quickly as I can. You're short on time. Number one, I tell all the people that didn't vote that would support the Democrats, this is what we get. And number two, the GOP and Donald Trump, they're the party of false premises. A while ago, that man Jude from Louisiana said that all these immigrants and whatever is on Medicaid. That's not true. I get $23 a month from food stamps. Only 23. I'm lower middle class. And you know how hard it was to get that? How many IDs? I practically had to take a pint of blood and my firstborn's pint of blood. So it's unbelievable. So the immigrants do not get Medicaid. That's BS. And the party of Republicans is false premise. They lie and they run like they're going to score a touchdown. And before anybody knows, wait a minute, pigs don't fly. But that's what they're arguing about.
Well, Daniel, are you worried? Are you worried about your SNAP benefits, about food stamps?
Yeah, I went to Catholic Charities today, first time in my life, to get food. And my neighbors did too. We're lower middle class. It's a nice little neighborhood, but people are going to churches to get food. They're very worried about it. I'm very worried about my health benefits. My nephew's on Medicaid. They're not approving anything for him right now. He is disabled, and he's very, very worried about that too. This is hurting most Americans. And they just don't care. They care about themselves and their pockets. But one day we will all meet God, and I sure hate to be next to Donald Trump when he's at that point.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, thank you for that call. Chuck Todd, it kind of reminds me when you hear from Daniel, who says, he's collecting SNAP benefits. He's worried about losing them. That there are, in the immigration raids that have been going on, there are people who are legal who are getting caught up in this, that they shouldn't be, but they are getting caught up in this. And somebody like Daniel, who's, rightfully collecting his SNAP benefits and is worried that this bill, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and some people that should be getting the benefits might lose them.
Look, and I also should note there's mixed status families out there, right? Some that are here in this country legally and some that are not, where this gets very complicated. How do you decide who's getting the benefit, right, on something like this? And so, look, this is what I think makes it. I mean, I go back to what Josh Hawley, Josh Hawley is one of the more interesting senators that I like to follow, because he really seems to understand who his voters are now, right? And he actually, to his credit, I mean, it's why he's won twice now. He does understand who his electorate is, and this is where he doesn't think they should be touching any part of Medicaid, like not one bit, because, here's the thing, even if you're trying, this goes back to, I remember when a Senator Marco Rubio launched those PPP loans during COVID, and somebody said, hey, shouldn't there be some sort, and it was like they decided not to have any sort of extra check to make sure, because the assumption was we got to hurry up and get the money out. There's going to be some graft, but hopefully it's minimal. Hopefully it's within reason, but at the end of the day, you want to hurry up and get the benefits out. And I think that's the situation that a Josh Hawley's worried about, that whatever you're doing to try to, you somehow make sure somebody who's undocumented is not getting a benefit, you may end up slowing the whole process down, and those that need it and have earned it or have qualified for it, suddenly they're getting, it takes longer to get the benefit. And then that will feel like a cut to some voters.
Tolliver, what is coming in online?
Tons of stuff. So Albert says, so many of the representatives voted for this without, and they admit it, even reading the bill. Talk about the blind leading the blind. And then Albert, I do want to brought up AI and how I think the bill says that, we can't, our state and
can't regulate it.
Thank you.
States can't regulate it.
I was
that I think that is getting traction. That is getting traction. And Tolliver, that is the whole, the members of Congress that admitted they didn't read the bill are the ones that want to backtrack on that specific issue alone, that feels like a total giveaway to the big tech companies that, hey, we will shield you from any regulation from all 50 states, which would be an unusual thing to do. And given the immediate outcry that you're seeing, and I don't think any politician left or right wants to get caught looking like they're trying to protect big tech these days. I assume that, raising the alarm bells about that provision probably means it'll get struck out.
Well, and Mara, doesn't a provision like that not go along with the idea of a reconciliation bill that's supposed to be about budgetary things?
Well,
like that?
Yes. And there is an arbiter in Congress who decides if things fit the criteria of a reconciliation bill. They're supposed to just be budgetary. But there's been an effort among Republicans in the Senate to ignore. Is it the parliamentarian who does that? Yes,
Elizabeth
so the
McDonough,
parliamentarian, right? She decides whether something belongs in the reconciliation bill or not. And the reason why presidents use reconciliation is because you only need 51 votes. It can't be filibustered. It's can be passed. It can circumvent that. So that'll be an interesting thing. If senators really want to keep a provision like that in, they're going to have to ignore the parliamentarian and break through yet another norm of our system of three co-equal branches of government. And we'll see if that happens. But, Scott, I also think there's so many cross currents of problems. I still think in the end this thing passes. But don't forget about all those blue state Republicans who want there to be a much higher cap on the amount of taxes they can deduct, state taxes they can deduct from their federal taxes. And that's another big problem.
Right. Yes. Let's go to Scott, who's in South Charleston, West Virginia. Hi, Scott. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much. I agree much about the tax cuts to the rich and Medicaid and everything. I'm going to go to another part of it. And one thing I heard recently, a good acronym for the bill is the One Bad Betrayal Bill. A Democratic representative coined that. But what I'd like to talk about is the energy tax credits are needed to help solve climate change. And some of the red state senators realize that the IRA bill was carefully thought out and the incentives are helping their red state residents quite a bit. And West Virginia, of course, is a red state. And we've had solar panels on our house for 2 years now. We've gone from $500 electric bills in the summer and winter down to $14 connection charges to be paid back in about 6 to 7 years. Our church just now, this week, installed solar panels at my encouragement for it. We've got 2 EVs. We're trying to do everything we can. One of those EVs is now 7 years old, 130,000 miles. We're putting our money and effort into where it counts, and I wish more people would. But unfortunately, our PSC and the federal government has a $250 a year federal tax on EVs, and our state has a $200 extra per year tax. They're trying to drive people away from electric vehicles, which are part of the solution to climate change over the long term.
Scott, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, no, that's a great point. And Mara Liasson, a lot of this bill would kind of undo the Inflation Reduction Act that was one of President Biden's big bills that put a ton into. It was called the biggest climate change bill like in the history of the world.
Yeah, a lot of this undoes that. I really would be interested in hearing what the Josh Hawleys and Steve Bannons think about this, because I mean, clean energy doesn't seem very ideological or cultural, but there does seem to be a kind of ideological culture war attitude. If it's green, it must be woke. And this bill undoes a lot of things that were supposed to combat climate change. And just today, the president signed an executive order to undo California's efforts to set standards for electric vehicles. So I think that this pretty much ends the United States' efforts to combat climate change. And it's interesting to me that a lot of the projects that the Inflation Reduction Act funded, and your caller just mentioned them, were in red states. Partially politically, Joe Biden actually thought it was a good idea to spread out the money in the IRA to red states, but also because in red states you can get permits a lot faster than in some blue states to build these projects. So, but a lot of those things are going to be hurt. But I still think it's kind of like what we were talking about before. Just because a red state is going to lose some funding and jobs from some kind of a climate change project, that's not enough to make that red state member or senator vote against this bill.
Well, and just a note, because I like to bring this point up. When we talk about red states and blue states, more people voted for Donald Trump in Los Angeles County than in all of Louisiana. Just to put that out there. We're all mixed everywhere we go. Tolliver, one of the most contentious issues in this Megabill concerns the potential cuts, as we've been talking about, to Medicaid spending.
Yeah, and lawmakers have been getting an earful about that at town hall meetings around the country. Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst probably heard the most viral moment right here.
So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible, so they will be coming off. So people are not. Well, we all are going to die. So, for heaven's sakes.
We're all going to die, Tolliver. We're all
Technically, she's right.
Die.
We are all going to die.
It's true. Yes. It's not really the most politically wise thing to say to a group, but yes, that is a true statement.
The gasps really got me.
Oh, boy. We'll be right back with more of The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So No, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, right, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and this hour we're asking for your thoughts on Trump's Megabill. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out at listentothemiddle.com. I am joined by NPR national political correspondent Mara Liasson and Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck ToddCast. Let's go back to the phones, and Jackie, who is calling from Douglas, Wyoming. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I very much appreciate it.
Of course.
And it's an honor to be on with all of you. Thank you very much. I'm concerned, as many people are, about the Medicaid pieces of the bill. But one of the things that I think has been little mentioned is, Maura Liasson mentioned that Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, was in many ways an extension of Medicare. And I was listening to a gentleman on our local NPR station today talk about how Obamacare will be really affected by the cuts in the current bill, because it will cut the support for the Affordable Care Act and will increase the cost to people by quite a bit. He gave the example of a person who might pay about $450 now in copays for insurance, but now will probably pay about $3,500 under this bill. So it will be a large change for people who are using the Affordable Care Act and are using. So I'm concerned about that for a lot of people. May lose health care, not just people who are on Medicare or Medicaid.
Jackie, thank you for bringing that up. Chuck Todd, what do we know about how this is going to affect just regular Affordable Care Act, not Medicaid expansion, but just regular Affordable Care Act?
I think Care Act subsidies that were passed in Biden's bill, his BBB, right? We went from one BBB to another BBB, right? Build Back Better, I think, is what he called his. And they're going to expire at the end of this calendar year unless Congress does it. So I believe that's what the caller is referring to. And this is something that I'm not convinced that this is a dead issue yet, because I do think there are plenty of Republicans, including those that are going to be on the ballot in 26, who may not be wanting to try to defend these premium hikes. I'm thinking Susan Collins in Maine. I'm thinking Joni Ernst in Iowa, especially after that comment that she made as well. And so but they are due to expire, and the fact is right now they're not extended. So the caller's right that if nothing's done, then those subsidies go away, and people that were getting a little extra help in order to afford the Affordable Care Act, it's going to go up. Yeah. Premiums are going to go up in 27.
Yeah, and this is like so many other things in the Trump administration. We're waiting for it to have an effect on ordinary people's lives and see what they think about it. Right now, everything is pretty abstract. Right. You know, one side is telling you it's going to benefit the rich. The other side is telling you you're going to get great economic growth. We have to wait to see. Same with the tariffs. People have to actually feel it in their lives and make a judgment.
Right. Like we are with Real ID right now. I mean, I don't think that was coming for so long, and now everybody has to deal with it. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, right. In the airport. Bob is calling from Salon Springs, Wisconsin. Bob, what do you think of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill?
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call. I've never voted for a Democrat on the national election, and I'll probably never vote for a Republican again. And here's why: as an actual lifelong conservative, I know what it means to be a conservative, and it means fiscal conservatism, which this bill flaunts by just blowing the national debt through the ceiling. And I also believe in letting the government leave us alone, which is what conservatives have been preaching from the pulpit for the last, I don't know, my entire lifetime. So more than 40 years. Unfortunately, we've got the military, which is getting the bulk of this spending, now being leveraged against the civilian population in California, which of course is a liberal bastion, so everyone's celebrating it on the Republican side. But this is malarkey. If they can leverage the military against us, then that's the opposite of the government staying out of our business.
Bob, I wonder
thirdly,
how.
I mean,
let me just ask you a question, a follow-up question. Let me ask you a follow-up question, which is, why do you think so many of your fellow Republicans and conservatives do not have the same problems with this that you do?
I believe that it's a philosophical problem that when one of the two parties gets the hammer of the federal government, they use it against their opponents rather than disassembling the hammer. And the Republicans and the Democrats always decry the expansion of executive power, but every time they get the reins, they expand it. And they use it against their opponents, which sounds really good and feels really good in the moment. But then when they're on the outs, they cry foul that they can't believe that anyone would ever use the executive power against them like this. But guess what? When they get the brains again, they will do it again. And that's why my misguided friends on the conservative side are going along with this, because they think that Donald Trump is saving them from Mexican tomato pickers or whatever other the boogeyman in the closet is out there. But in fact, what we're doing is just empowering the state and the military to not only kill civilians in Gaza, but also subjugate Americans right here on our own soil, which is antithetical to the Constitution and everything the Republicans supposedly stood for.
Okay, Bob, thank you very much for that. Chuck Todd, a lot there. One of the things that he brought up right at the top of that was that this bill does not do anything good for the deficit. It actually expands it.
Yeah, no. And this is, look, we've been on the brink of the debt, crashing our economy, if you believe some people, for decades. So I do fear that the average voter now hears it as sort of a crying wolf type of messaging. But, this is, this does feel like we are now pushing the outer ends there. And, this is, I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. There's two issues. That one's a pet issue on the right rhetorically, but nothing's ever done about it, dealing with the debt. And one is a pet issue on the left, campaign finance reform, that's rarely ever dealt with. And I sort of proposed that, those that want to see campaign finance reform and those that want to see an actual reduction of the debt ought to join forces, because I will tell you this. Nobody spends money on politics in order to get less money out of government, right? They spend money on politics because they're looking for a tax break, they're looking for a subsidy, they're looking for, they want something out of government. So, I don't know, until this is one of those moments, Congress, our government is never going to deal with this debt issue in a preemptive fashion. It is going to be after it's a crisis. It is going to be when the bond market implodes on us. Unfortunately, it's not something we will tackle beforehand, not unless we have a sustained period where neither party has full control of the federal government. I mean, I would argue the one time we had some progress, right, is when there was a Democratic president, Republican Congress, or a Republican president, Democratic Congress. I don't think you can trust one party with sole control and hope that somehow they're going to care about the debt.
Yeah, and the caller is part of a kind of small government, relatively libertarian conservatism that just doesn't exist anymore, or it certainly doesn't exist in the leadership of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is a big government party. It wants to use the federal government to push what it believes. And it's not about small government conservatism. Now, I think that we're on our way to a real fiscal crisis. The bond market hasn't exactly imploded, but it certainly has acted. And it's requiring us to pay more money to service our debt. Right. That's what the bond market does.
Yep.
And it surprised a lot of people and scared a lot of people. And Moody's downgraded the United States debt. And for a long time, as Chuck said, it seemed like the deficit kept growing, but nothing really bad happened. Well, I think we're getting to a limit. Everything has a limit. And that's why you see Ron Paul and other people kind of who really believe in this. They're kind of the last Mohicans, the last people, the last Republicans who actually do care about the deficit and the debt. But remember, Donald Trump famously said, "I love debt." And he spent his whole business career doing things with other people's money that he had borrowed. And, I think that the only way things will change is if something really, really bad happens, which is too bad.
Yeah. Tolliver, what else is coming in online?
Wow, I was just thinking about you calling me. So a lot of people have been talking about student loan repayment. So an anonymous person says, it's horrific. Student loan repayment is unrealistic for the average citizen, and it also strips federal employee benefits earned with years of public service. But I was really hung up on that student loan repayment piece. So I guess either one of you.
This bill does have some effect, either of you, on student loan repayment and some of the things that President Biden had tried to do that Trump is trying to undo. No takers.
Yeah, it
on
makes it.
student loans.
There are a lot of things that made paying back your student loan easier, like years of public service, as Tolliver just mentioned, and this strips that away. So people are going to have to pay more. It's going to if you're somebody with student loan debt, it just got more expensive for you.
Look, I'll be honest. I think that President Biden and the Democrats could have created a better situation for those on student loans. They were trying to go with complete forgiveness. I think there would have been more bipartisan support for this had there been some sort of, if you do this, you get forgiveness here. If you do this, and I think that not laying that groundwork made this very vulnerable to just Republicans coming in and just say, we're not doing this giveaway.
Yeah. Noah is calling from Pennsylvania. Hi, Noah. What do you think of the bill?
Hi there. Thank you so much for taking my call. Look, I'm a recent college graduate, and I really enjoyed studying politics and policy in college. I could talk about a lot of these niche issues for a long time. But really what I'm more concerned about from our elected officials is that they are caring for us and really, really thinking through the provisions of these bills, and with this One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it's obviously a huge piece of legislation, but even if they're not, experts in the individual areas, I think they really owe it to us to read through everything and to really understand it. And I think the whole, I didn't read this part of the bill and now I don't support it, is just a symptom of a larger sort of carelessness and thoughtlessness that I really am worried about. And I think they owe it to everyone in both parties to be really more thoughtful and careful about these large pieces of legislation.
Great point, Noah. And let me just ask you, do you feel like this bill is going to have an impact on your life?
Yeah, I mean, I, as a young person, am super excited about the future of clean energy and of really revitalizing American manufacturing in the green spaces for my future and for my generation's future and our kids' future. And if this bill were to end that, that would be catastrophic, I think, for all of us, not just in terms of our competition with China and other nations, but just for our nation's own prosperity. So that's one of the many things in this bill that really worries me and I think will directly affect me and people in my life.
Noah, thank you very much for that. Chuck, he brings up the idea that nobody reads the bills, fewer people read the bills.
Well, I love that he mentioned also that he was recently in college. Every class that you took in college, there was some stuff you're like, all right, I can just sort of, I can do the lecture and be okay. But there was always one or two things you knew you had to read, right? And, all I'm asking of these members of Congress, I'm not asking you to read every bill, but can you read the big one, right? We're just asking you to read just one bill a year. I mean, look, I think this is a ridiculous way to conduct legislation, but we've been going down this road for the entire 21st century where a president comes in, they have narrow majorities, they try to jam everything they can in one bill. The irony here is if Donald Trump accepted the reality that this country is divided pretty 50-50 and said, hey, I want to work with a group of Democrats, I want to work with me, he would actually give himself more flexibility to do certain things. He could lose certain Republicans that maybe doesn't support his style of economic populism, but he might be able to find some Democrats that do. But, when you're governing by this party line vote nonsense, you're going to get, I think, really ineffective bills. And then here's what else happens. What happens when the other party gets in? They just hurry up and repeal as much as they can of what the previous party did. They don't get to do all of it, right? John McCain prevented Obamacare from being totally repealed. But, they chip away at it. And I promise you, Democrats will chip away. Whatever gets passed here, once they get the opportunity, they'll take away some things. And it's just, this is why I think, the markets are just getting very frustrated with America's government.
Yeah. And why voters are fed up too. Look, one of the big themes of this second Trump term has been the abdication of Congress from its constitutionally prescribed responsibilities. It's not just that they stuff everything into a big bill, because we've seen Congresses do that before, but the appropriations process, I think, is going extinct. They just pass CRs, giant funding bills to keep the government open, but they don't thoughtfully look at the appropriations bill for each agency and what it would do and what they want to fund. Right. It's like that's just too hard for Congress anymore.
Let me just get one more call in here from Sharon, who is in Denver, Colorado. Hi, Sharon. Go ahead with your thoughts about the bill.
Hi. Well, I am very concerned about raising the debt limit and the deficit. And I am not an economist. I'm a nurse. I guess my biggest problem, I just want somebody to actually talk about the time. There was a time in history when we were in the black, and that was in the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. And I would love to hear that referred to. Most of my life, I've heard about deficits, and I would love to. I would like, nobody puts light on that.
Yeah, Sharon, thank you for putting a light on it right now. And I think we're going to do an entire show about this issue. But Chuck Todd, I'll just give you the last word here on that. And by the way, Clinton was in the black with the deficit, but there was still a national debt at that.
Still
time.
A debt, right? The deficit is the year to year. The debt is the accumulation, right? It's sort of you're paying off your monthly statement, but maybe you didn't pay off the entire thing. Look, to that caller. You long for the days of Ross Perot, because I always credit Ross Perot with sobering up the Democrats on fiscal responsibility and sobering up Republicans on trade deals. Yeah, and that is actually what it's going to take, right? It's going to take an outside force that threatens the status of the two major parties on a specific issue, maybe like the debt, like Ross Perot did. He did it on the debt, and he did it on these trade deals, and what was happening. He was running against NAFTA, if you recall. But it really did create an atmosphere in Washington in the 90s that put it at the center, right? You had Bill Clinton doing it with the Democrats. He raised taxes to deal with the deficit at the urging of Wall Street advisors like Bob Rubin and Larry Summers. And then Republicans got Congress, and then together – the one thing they could agree on was sort of some fiscal restraint. You had a guy like John Kasich working with Bill Clinton, and they got it done. And I think that's what you need. You're in the middle. You need bipartisan government.
Bipartisanship, a perfect note to end this hour on. I want to thank my guests, Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck ToddCast, and NPR national political correspondent Mara Liasson. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And don't forget, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got an episode of our weekly extra One Thing Trump Did coming later this week about the idea of removing fluoride from our drinking water. And next week, we'll be back here talking about the philosophical middle and how we can apply philosophy in our approach to politics.
That's a new one. Okay, as always, you can call in at 844-4-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter and support us with a tax-deductible donation.
Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the hundreds of public radio stations making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you next week.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape. Feel-good fits offering ease of movement and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969, Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I actually drive better when I'm high. It heightens my senses, calms me down. If anything, I'm more careful. Honestly, it just helps me focus.
That's probably what the driver who killed a 4-year-old told himself. And now he's in prison. You see, no matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.